What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
The Premier gave you the mandate to study secularism in schools last fall. What took so long to make this announcement, and why is another group like this necessary?
We've decided to take it separately. First, with the school, because we had a problem well documented at Bedford and 17 other schools. So that's why Bernard Drinville and I set another investigation. Because education is in advance, Bernard Drinville will be able to come with the law. It's important to say that 5 years after the Bill 21, we should make a reflection to be sure that it was the right, that Quebec is always at the same place, or maybe we should move further.
Huh? That is Jean-François Roberge, of course, the language minister. He is referring to context here, the Quebec government's decision to create a committee to make recommendations on how to strengthen secularism in the province. Not in those schools, just apparently across the whole province. James Mennie is at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, we sorely need this, don't we?
The CAC sorely needs it. Bill 21 was introduced, which I always have to preface. Bill 21 is completely illegal from one end to the other. The only reason it's on the books is because of the notwithstanding clause. But all that said, okay, Bill 21 was introduced to appeal to the CAC's xenophobic, Islamophobic base, and it worked. It showed that base that the CAC was serious about harassing people whose names aren't named Tremblay, have blonde hair or blue eyes. Okay? Case closed. Now, why are they? That's an excellent question. That's why I chose that question. Why is it after 5 years you're doing this? Well, it's very simple. It's not because of the issue in those schools that were cited about, cliques of teachers who were forcing students not to speak French and forcing students, female students, not to engage in sports. That's not about religion. That's about people not doing their jobs. And quite frankly, if you're not doing your job, that's something your boss should take up. The problem being, of course, that Francois Legault figured, school commissions, who needs those? I'm going to flood school commissions with all the same brain-dead bureaucrats I've got working in all the other ministries. And that's why this was allowed to progress to such a state. But this is being used as a pretext to, as this CAC government always does, distract from the single biggest scandal in this government's history, which is the Sac-Click fiasco. Even though Francois Legault would love to drown the fish, as we say in these parts, he's going to have a public inquiry, he doesn't want people talking about this. He wants people worried about Muslims taking over our schools. Okay? That's what he wants. Rather than turning around and talking about bureaucrats and incompetence named by Francois Legault and company, who cost us at least $500 million more than we should have for a system that still doesn't work. Let's talk about secularism in schools. It would be funny if it wasn't so pathetic and dangerous. And the only light at the end of this tunnel, Aaron, is that more and more with each passing day, this government and everyone in it is going to get drop-kicked out of office so fast next year, it won't even be funny.
All right, so let me go over a couple of things here, Jim. One, of course, I was kidding when I said this is so neat, tongue firmly planted in cheek, but the other part of this that really bothers me is, well, two things, actually. Number one, that this is being done at the same time that we know Bill 21 is officially going to be heard by the Supreme Court of Canada, which it took about 5 minutes after that announcement as Canada acting as an intervener for, of course, Simon Jolin Barrette to come out and say this was a slap in the face to Quebec. And now, boom, here's this in the midst of all that. Again, Bill 21. And then secondly, that as part of this new committee, or as an aside, they're going to have call it what it is. It's a snitch line. And I thought that's an even bigger insult.
Absolutely. And you have to remember that the most fundamental support, the most fundamental justification for Bill 21, indeed most of the CAC's legislative agenda, are people who write columns for Pierre-Carl Pelledo. So you have to understand, you got to get them fired up. So once again, you got to have a news like, oh, look, it's going to the Supreme Court. Oh, look, the feds are getting involved. Let's get people angry about that. But you know what, Aaron, I draw some solace from the fact I don't think it's going to work this time. I think people have had their bellies full of the CAC's rubbish, of their xenophobic, populist crap. They're proving to be one of the most quickly transforming unpopular governments in Quebec history, and they need to grab every shiny thing they can and throw it in the air to make sure people aren't looking at the rot that is set into that government from the inside. So you know what? Bring it on. Bring on your snitch line. Bring it all on, and we'll see how long it goes. But my real question, as I've said from the day one, Aaron, if the Supremes turn around and say, you know what, your law is illegal and it has been struck down, what does Francois Legault do? Will the people of Quebec hold a referendum and leave Canada to make sure that their snitch line can endure? Or perhaps, do you think maybe, Aaron, just maybe, the people of Quebec have a little more on their minds, okay, than whether or not we have enough regulations overseeing what teachers do in our schools?
By the way, should mention with respect to the real problem, the real issue, and you're right, this is the one, Francois Legault does not want us talking about, the whole SACLIC issue. There's an update to that, Jim, right on the Journal de Montréal story this morning that suggests that people involved all got raises for the fine job they were doing. Add insult to injury.
Well, no, they got the bonuses before the product was actually unveiled, which makes perfect sense because God knows it would be tough. It would be a tough sell afterwards. Just one ongoing disaster, but one that, and this is what scares the hell out of a cacking company, it's one that can be fully appreciated by all Quebecers. This is a real populist issue, and one that, quite frankly, very justifiably terrifies Francois Legault and company.
Let me move on and talk about the other story, of course, and that's what happened over the weekend. Mark Carney squeaking by Chrystia Freeland to win the Liberal leadership with 85, almost 86% of the vote. So the question then becomes, and I was asking our listeners, and I'm going to go back to this, Jim, when we get done, what does this mean? So here you have a guy, forget about, him winning this over the other people in the race. I want to move on. He is the prime minister. He'll be the prime minister by the middle of this week officially. You have a good chance against Pierre Poilievre, and I know people are saying, well, he has no political experience, which he doesn't, right? He's been in boardrooms his whole life, whether it's a governor of the Bank of Canada or England, and I thought maybe that's actually an advantage against someone like Pierre Poilievre, who seems to have only one speed, and that's attack all the time. What do you think?
I was listening to you earlier, and it's kind of funny because, you kind of stole half my lines there, Aaron, but here's the thing. 85.9% is not a mandate that you give a candidate. That's the mandate you give a savior. That's the mandate you give a messiah, okay? Right now, the assumption is Mark Carney is going to solve all of our problems. He's going to solve Donald Trump. He's going to solve Pierre Poilievre. He's going to solve all the problems in the country. We are going to hit the reset button, and life is going to be great, even though, as you quite rightly point out, he doesn't have a lot of flight time as a politician. He has not worked in government. He's worked in banking, which is not necessarily the same thing. And as you also rightly point out, he didn't exactly cover himself with glory in the leaders' debates, either in English or in French. So the trick is, Mark Carney, like a shark, has got to keep moving. The last thing he needs is even a moderately length election campaign. He's got to keep it right, tight, and very, very bright. He's got to keep moving. He's got to keep the Tories off balance. He has got to keep holding on to the momentum that was created this weekend and use it to basically bulldoze the Conservatives off the face of the political map. If he stops, if he allows himself, even for a second, to have any kind of a bullseye drawn on him, we have no idea how he's going to react. But the fact of the matter is, we already know that Poilievre will do his best, and he won't have to try too hard to paint Mark Carney as having been an integral part of the Trudeau government, an integral part of the establishment that not that long ago, Aaron, people wanted to run out of town on a rail. So the bottom line here is you've got the momentum, you've got the goal around you. Do not waste it. Do not engage in ridiculous meetings. Call the election. Challenge Poilievre to as many debates as possible, as quickly as possible. Do not, as I say, don't give them time to rally. Don't give them time to collect their thoughts. You're going to have to keep on moving, because if you do anything other than that, I think it's going to be a recipe for disaster.
Interesting, and it's funny because I mentioned about Tom Mulcair, right? I heard him on this morning with Andrew suggesting he thought the way to go would be to have a longer campaign, a drawn-out campaign. So I'm curious. I'm going to have him back after 5:30 and try to understand why he thinks that's a good idea.
I heard him as well, Aaron, and I got to tell you, I'll never forget when Stephen Harper in 2015 called the election in early August.
Yeah.
And I did a double take then. I did a double take this morning when I was listening to Tom Mulcair, because honestly, in this day and age, this internet swipe left age, a long campaign is a very, very dangerous game to play.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
The